searching emotions inside your soul. Look inside, you can see, embrace to the other side.
Always good to hear.
All right,
Yep.
let's do it. Are we good to go? We're good to go. Okay. Sorry for the delay. Thank you for joining us. Again, welcome everyone. We're streaming live. We're also recording this, so don't mess it up. And then go ahead and start running the timer. And you got it. Why don't you take 5 off and then run it? Yeah. Oh yeah, you're gonna do it all at once. That's enough. That's good. Okay. And after this, the Expo 4 will open and you get to see everything going on. So again, I'm Roger. I'm the conference chair, and we've organized some wonderful power panels, as we call them. We're going to talk about blockchain here. So first, I'll quickly introduce our participants. We have Ed Featherston, who knows everything about blockchain, and we have Carol Rogers from IBM, and we have Karl Prustalski, who spoke earlier today. I'll let them talk a little bit about exactly who they're with and what they do in a second. But first, I'm going to read what we published to promote this session, and we'll see if this matches up at all. The name of this session is called How Blockchain is Changing Enterprise IT. The world of blockchain technologies is provocative, it's controversial, and unproven. So I say, for every person who hypes blockchain as a revolution, there is someone else who proclaims it to be a solution in search of a problem. This panel provides an alleged serious examination of the different types of blockchain and what exactly do they bring to enterprise IT. And the most important thing is if you can talk a little bit about use cases. The criticisms I've heard, I've been studying and working blockchain now for like 3 years, and the criticisms I've heard over the last 6 months have been, show me the use cases. When you dive down into the particular technologies, it can get very complicated and confusing. Oh, there's Roberto. Come on up. Did they mic you? Oh, go get a mic. And you're number 4. And you're number 3. So we're going to make Carl move over. And sorry, it's just a logistical thing. So anyway, introduce yourselves briefly and give me a quick thing on, am I right or wrong about saying that we need to know more about use cases? And if you can think of one that you can describe quickly, please do so. Ed.
Hey, I'm Ed Featherston. I'm with Cloud Technology Partners, a Hewlett-Packard enterprise company. I'm a distinguished technologist and technology evangelist there. Some of you were probably at my session earlier talking about blockchain and trust. I've been speaking and writing about blockchain for approximately the last 4 years or so. I agree with you, Roger, that use cases are the key and are the critical thing. I'm a big proponent of that technology is not the destination, it's a vehicle to get there. And blockchain is just another vehicle. You need to figure out where you're going first before you figure out whether the technology is the right technology for you. From a use case perspective, at a high level, when I talk to customers about it, I ask them to think about three things where blockchain might come into play. The first thing I bring up is chain of custody. The classic TV police procedural, everybody's familiar with, you need to keep tabs on the chain of custody for a particular item or an asset. Followed by chain of events, that you need to keep track of what happened when to that item. And the third key thing for me with blockchain is there has to be multiple stakeholders that are not all just in your company. It's usually multiple companies, multiple people. When you tie those three together at a high level from a business perspective, it might be something to talk about blockchain about. Not guaranteed, but at least it gets you in the ballpark.
Okay. Carol.
Great. Hi, my name is Carolyn Rogers. I'm a product manager for the IBM blockchain platform. And we deliver a platform, use case agnostic, for companies to come and build their permissioned blockchain networks on top of it. And it's underpinned by the open source Hyperledger Fabric. So I think that was a great categorization of some of the key characteristics of good blockchain use cases. Three that come to mind, specific clients that we're working with, many in the supply chain, in various supply chains in different industries. One company is working on an oil and gas supply chain to bring those suppliers together. Another great use case is around digital media rights and advertising tracking. So the digital world is really ripe for blockchain because it's hard to track digital assets and ensure that they're not being duplicated. And in digital advertising and media, it's difficult to know where your advertising dollars are being spent and if they're actually being spent in the way that you intended them to be. So one company we're working with, MediaOcean, is attempting to solve this problem using the IBM blockchain platform. And you can think about other items that have value. For example, tickets. We have a startup. We work with a lot of startups as well as large enterprises. A startup is working with large venues and ticketing vendors like Ticketmaster to track tickets from venues to ensure that they're not being scalped and that they're going where they're supposed to, and that the venues see all the returns from those tickets. So lots of areas that are ripe for it.
I grew up in the media business. That's not good. They're going to fight that because it is difficult. You're spending all this money and it just kind of goes out there. And I think it may actually, for the first time, bring some discipline in the media business to the difference between, say, branding and click-throughs and all the direct response you want. And so many gray areas when you're buying media, and it's growing. So that's a really intriguing one. Roberto Medrano has joined us, and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, Roberto Medrano. I've been an enterprise person working for multiple companies here in the Valley. I was general manager of HP Software. I was president of several security companies and CEO of security companies. I was at the beginning of the firewall, at the beginning of the anti-spam, worked for 5 public companies so far, and sold my last company in 2016, API management, API security company. And I've been doing blockchain and cryptocurrencies for several years now. In the craziness of 2017, I was in the board of about 15 companies that did an ICO, which is the crypto side. Currently, I'm in the board of 5 blockchain companies, most of them trying to do some sort of supply chain or fintech related things. So I'm pretty immersed into the blockchain-related / cryptocurrency side. And on the side, I'm a CEO of Venture Network, which is a blockchain project as well.
And the world of crypto, so we'll talk about that more in a little bit. And Carl, you spoke today. A lot of people here may have seen him. And what did you talk about, and what would you like to talk about?
Sure. My name is Karol Przystowski. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Collider, a company that I grounded in 2010. And we are focused on consultancy in blockchain and machine learning, data science. Actually, data science is my background. That's why I might talk.
So with machinery, and I missed a lot of your talk because I got pulled away. Are you talking about like real-time stuff, or how does it apply?
Well, there are many approaches. There are several approaches how to combine machine learning with blockchain. One of the use cases, one of our product that I showed that is already working is profitable is one that is based on, where the actually 2 technologies work together but separately. And one is actually used for the immutability to keep the images that are used on the internet, to track them, the authors of the images. And the second is the machine learning solution that is recognizing if the image is on the blockchain or not, and then track the abuse of the image somewhere. And
Well, a couple of issues before I dig down too much. Immutability, and I mean you can't change it, and scaling always come up. And so I'm trying to do a lot of work in the developing world, and the idea of an immutable record that is shared with everybody is very appealing in terms of transparency and eliminating the possibility, maybe not eliminating the possibility, but really reducing the possibility of monkey business, of funny business with these things. But the criticism I keep hearing is scaling. Now, ironically, the things that I'm thinking of working on really don't need to scale that much. And so I'm wondering, people sometimes will call blockchain a solution in search of a problem. Well, is a scaling issue a problem in search of a problem?
Well, scaling it is an issue depending on what you want to use blockchain for, like you said. If I want to use blockchain to handle all of the credit card transactions that MasterCard does every night, not happening in the near term. You're talking volumes there that are not achievable yet. And I do say yet because we always have a knack, if it's a technology challenge, technology challenges end up finding solutions eventually. One of the things I talked about earlier today is there's lots of different ways blockchain can achieve consensus, which has a direct impact on its scalability as far as how many transactions a second it can do on it. You take example, the public blockchain that Bitcoin sits on, which does proof of work, it takes roughly 10 minutes for them to validate a transaction. That translates down to about 7 transactions per second. Not going to quite work for the MasterCards of the world. But there are other consensus models that are used that greatly enhance and increase the capabilities of it from different other implementations of consensus. So it's a matter of dealing with the trade-off, figuring out what do I need, and then what product or consensus models are going to work to help me achieve that scale, or is the scale I need not achievable yet and I should be looking somewhere else?
Okay, Carol?
I think in general terms, scalability always been kind of an issue. Still an issue today on blockchain for certain applications. But if you take enough time, scalability issues are solved. At the beginning of the internet, which I'm old enough to remember, nobody wanted to. People say you cannot do transactions on the internet. It's too slow. Security is a problem. It cannot be done. You cannot put your enterprise on the internet. It's a problem. When the mobile came, you said REST APIs cannot do this thing. Transactions are too slow. The same thing is happening right now with blockchain. Everything is too slow. You can do 7 transactions, 10 transactions. Somebody comes with a big block size. Somebody comes with a new way of an algorithm. But it's a moving target as we speak. Those things will be solved. For now, we get some applications, and then for high throughput like MasterCard and Visa, you get some things eventually.
Carol?
Yeah, I agree that I think we will solve those problems eventually. I think it depends what you're trying to do, but what do we mean when we talk about scalability? Because the thing about blockchain technology and as a concept is not just a technological innovation, it's also an economic and a social innovation. So one of the issues, I think, the biggest hurdles to enterprise adoption and adoption in general and scalability is the fact that you have to bring a lot of parties to the table and work together, not just within the technology, but outside of it as well. And I think that's a barrier to scalability as we think of it.
I think you hit on a good point there of the fact that one of the things where blockchain plays well is when there are multiple stakeholders involved that don't necessarily want to play nice with each other. So getting that cultural shift to be able to scale it up and bring those people together to work together on that system is not a trivial task.
Yeah. Carl?
Well, when it comes to blockchain or distributed ledger, it's like choosing the right consensus method, choosing actually the whole way how we would like to keep it, like a blockchain or maybe Tangle. Maybe there is another solution to keep the blocks, and providing the best scalable solution for our case is just picking the right components and building it together. So that's crucial to it's like with IoT that some time ago we had the problem with scalability, and Tangle was introduced as a solution that actually is faster than the typical blockchain.
I have an enterprise, since again I wrote that we're going to talk about enterprise IT. So I have a question for Ed and Carol about that Then I have a separate question for Roberto, and then Carl, I'll have a surprise here. So, for our first two, enterprise, I think of logistics. I think of supply chains. And at one conference, I mentioned the provenance of oranges, and I think that's a real use case. I think there's oranges traveling the world in ships that are on the, I don't think each orange is on the blockchain, but a friend of mine said the provenance of oranges. He said, that sounds like a short story or an opera. You should write a book or something. I said, okay, someday. So am I on track when I'm, strictly like an enterprise IT audience? Is logistics and supply chain like a real core thing that we should focus on? So 1 and 2, and then Roberto, I got one for you that's related.
I mean, I'm a big believer at the fall session. I actually talked about the fact I'm a big believer that supply chain is one of the big potential use case scenarios for blockchain.
There's like 254 forms involved. I read about like these big tankers.
Absolutely.
Full of stuff, and no one knows anything.
And each one of those forms is in a separate computer system. People are re-entering the data.
And it's international. It's like,
so it's prime for having that transparent single ledger that everybody plays in. It's also a prime example of it requires everybody to play nice with each other, and there are people in that chain that don't necessarily want to play nice with each other.
Well, it's trustless. I mean, that's the whole point.
So it introduces that challenge on it. I think Carol can speak a lot because the focus IBM has on the food chain work that they've been doing.
We could bring up my colleague Laura over there, who works on the IBM Food Trust.
Okay.
But so we have a whole solution area around this very problem with IBM Food Trust in partnership with Walmart and other major grocery retailers that are doing multiple tracking and traceability and food safety initiatives along the food supply chain.
Food safety,
food safety, the ability to recall something efficiently when something happens and goes wrong, and trace it back to the point of origin and identify that this is the one farm that had a contamination issue due to a nearby processing plant, and that's the reason we have tainted romaine. But beyond that, we're also doing work, for example, in trade shipping networks. We have a solution called Trade Lens. It's a joint venture with Maersk. We've recently onboarded other major shipping carriers as well. And the problem there is that it is so paper-based and so physical to this day. And I heard the story of when a ship docks, there's a person that literally has to get off the ship, get in a cab, go to some authority, take a piece of paper, have it stamped, and take it back to the ship. And only then can anything be unloaded from the ship. And so these are huge inefficiencies that can be solved with just digitizing and putting all these assets on the blockchain.
I was in 1980, I was down in South America, and I have a lot of stories from that trip. But this one involved a warehouse. We had magazines we were trying to pick up, and they'd come down on a ship because we were too cheap to get them there any other way. There's a lot of magazines to us. And I'm not going to name the country because I love this particular country in South America, and it was a long time ago. So they took us to the port and the big warehouse where everything came in. And it was just, Indiana Jones, the last scene, it was the biggest nightmare you've ever seen. How are we going to find our magazines in this place? The building was 50 times the size of this building, and we said, we're never going to find our magazines. And the guy says, oh, don't worry, we lose cars in here, but we'll find it. And that's kind of what I see in the logistics, the delays and the perishable, and then tracing back disease and all that. This seems so overdue, shall we say.
Well, and one of the things I've seen, back to getting people to play nice with each other, when I have conversations with logistics companies and everything around this, one of the challenges they run into, because of the way the system is today, there are people along the supply chain that there are discrepancies along the way, and they actually make more money because of the discrepancies.
Well, there might be some people gaming the system here and there.
It's similar to living off the float in the financial services world. They live off the float of the discrepancies. And so having a fully transparent thing that tracks it all the way and they know where the discrepancies happen is something that there is some resistance to because of that.
Well, I think most blockchains are trying to disintermediate the middle people,
Right.
whether it's supply chain, whether it's finance, whether it's anything else, because of the transparency and the immutability that you have with the blockchains, whichever blockchain you want to use.
And I just wanted to say, in my long experience shipping these things all over the world, the worst problems I've ever had were in the U.S. So I wasn't picking on my friends in Peru. Anyway, Roberto. Okay. So Google's going to have a cryptocurrency, is this right? Facebook?
Facebook.
Oh, Google, we're speculating about Google because they want to keep up, but it's Facebook. And someone said, boy, those sound like the three best companies. Someone tweeted, what are the three best companies you can think of, most trusted companies to have crypto? And I said, well, McDonald's would be one. And I don't know, there's another one is a shoe company. And the Chicago Cubs. Thought, well, why not? People would jump on that. So Roberto, what is going on? And if he's paying attention to crypto, that means we all should. He knows what's going on here. So what's going on with this idea of a big corporation and enterprises having their own cryptocurrency as opposed to, how they come out of organizations that spring up overnight?
Well,
What's going on?
In general terms, we have a lot of cryptocurrencies today, but it's becoming too much because
Yeah.
every blockchain project wants you to pay with their own cryptocurrency. So if you're going to have your wallet with 100 cryptocurrencies to pay for every project, it's going to become too much. Now, there's going to be some new stable coins now that are coming out, and the Facebook is a stable coin that is coming out trying to do multiple transactions. And
So tie it to the dollar or tie it to currencies?
it's a stable,
Encourage
so it's
investment?
tied to some back securities with some good partners, like 20 partners. You can be also a partner if you have $10 million to
Yes,
put down.
I saw that, I passed, yeah.
So it is, it is the companies that own today your financial infrastructure along with like Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, Square, all those are part of this, plus some banks, plus Facebook, who has this 2 billion daily users, right? And the 2 million daily users, you may be able to use your phone to pay for multiple things.
So,
Just as people do in China today with WeChat and other things they do.
how is it different than buying stuff with my frequent flyer points from United? I'm like, what's the need? I've heard that Facebook is trying to address unbanked people throughout the world, and I get that, and there's a lot more to it to that, I think. But I still don't really understand the point of the stable coins that are coming from a large company.
Well, we talk about this intermediation here. So they create a new way to do payments
Okay.
without going to the normal banks.
Trying to cut fees.
And if you create this stable coin that is a worldwide, you also take it against the dollar. So you don't have to go to the dollar.
So Carl is visiting us from long ways away. And international markets, sending money internationally is a nightmare, an expensive nightmare. And how do you see that with blockchain maybe helping?
Well, now it's a bit easier than it was a couple of years ago, but still, cryptocurrency is it's super easy actually to pay if it's obviously allowed. But one thing to the previous question, because you mentioned Facebook as a coin, but please keep in mind that Google, for example, they have also a platform. Amazon has a platform to build the coins, like Google Stratus, for example, or Amazon has also their own platform to build the coins as well. So, and going back to the coins used international, yes, obviously, but it's also known that there are some abuse when it comes to cryptocurrencies actually used international, so it's also something risk behind it. So we also need to keep in mind that it's because we are under the most.
Elon Musk is testing the Hyperloop behind us right now. I forgot to mention that, and I tried to talk him out of it, but you can't argue with Elon. So
You brought up an
pass.
interesting point with the international, because I've actually been having some conversations out in social media the last couple of days around this, because I've been reading up on how Facebook is implementing this. And I was struggling with, I understood where the participants, the big banks and PayPal and Venmo and Facebook, those people get to make money off the interest on your Libra stuff that's sitting in your account.
Yes.
So I understand their incentive, and I was struggling with, well, what's the incentive for me to use it? I can pay today with my credit card or with Venmo or with PayPal, but I had several people on social media point out to me, yeah, but paying things internationally is a struggle. Being able to transfer money or pay for things across borders and everything is not a trivial thing and not something I deal with on a regular basis. Yeah. So I think he raised an interesting point because that's something I've had several people bring up to me as an incentive from a user perspective.
Usually for Americans, because we have this thing called the dollar, it doesn't look that you need something else. Or you're outside of the United States, you don't have the dollar. People are paying $1.50 for $1 just to get the dollar because they're going to devaluate themselves. They're going to do different things. So they want to have another currency which is stable in their own country. Think Venezuela and all the other places. Their own country that is more stable than their own currency. And they also want to be able to transfer that across borders. And with this, you don't have to pay anybody. You don't have to go through multiple bank transactions. You just go to your wallet to send it, like a Venmo, to another person.
Okay.
Very simply.
So, Carol, with IBM, when I was looking first at the Hyperledger stuff going on, and IBM donated that to Hyperledger Foundation, the idea was the semi-trusted partners, institutions that are all in there, and the validation and consensus will be done within that circle by trusted partners, and the incentive would be wasn't proof of work, that wasn't proof of stake.
Proof of stake.
Byzantine fault tolerance in the Hyperledger.
Yeah, proof of, but I can't.
Well, it's agreement amongst a defined number of participants in the permission.
No, and so, but what we're talking about now seems to go beyond that. So is IBM's focus still on that idea of the modified Byzantine fault tolerance thing among a few trusted partners, or are you?
Yes, so at IBM we focus primarily on the permissioned blockchain space, and that's for a number of reasons. Primarily, though, that enterprises and businesses need to know and want to know who are the parties that they are transacting with and doing business with.
So even in a complex, like, big supply chain thing, it's still a limited number of...
Yeah, you might have a very large consortium, but it's still, at the end of the day, there are regulatory reasons and business reasons that you need to know the identity of all the members participating in your consortium. So that's why we have prioritized our work with the Hyperledger Fabric and the Linux Foundation and really building out the capabilities of permissioned blockchain and distributed ledger frameworks using the types of different types of consensus mechanisms, but those that don't require the crypto economics, such as proof of work or proof of stake, that are very resource intensive, that are required to verify public network transactions.
And the Facebook Libra blockchain, from everything I'm reading so far, they haven't released the details under the covers, but is using a consensus engine similar to what Hyperledger is.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me about the Facebook announcement is the decisions that they have made so far are really based on existing paradigms existing in the landscape now. So they've decided to begin with a permissioned approach. For the reason that proof of stake, which they intend to move to in 5 years or so, and so they say, has not been quite proven out practically yet. And so eventually they say they want to scale beyond the 28 members they've onboarded so far or have agreed to come along with them so far to 100 initial members, and then eventually they'll open it up even more. But I think they have realized what we have realized for the past several years as we worked with enterprises, that there's a reason you start in a state where you know the members that you're participating with, because there are a number of benefits from a practicality and efficiency and transactional throughput standpoint.
But unlike Hyperledger, it's a underlying technology that's been trying to use by many companies. This is a method of payment and transfer value from one to another, so it's a use case. rather
Yes.
than a
Right.
blockchain.
Right. Again, it's back to, and part of it is Facebook wanting to be able to use the name blockchain on it because everybody, you're doing blockchain.
Which,
They're doing a use case that happens to be sitting on top of a blockchain.
Right, which some people may argue may not be a true blockchain, but that's regardless.
Carl's been shaking his head yes to everything that Carol was saying. So, what is it you're agreeing with? The idea of still having the trusted partners is a good thing a good way to go, even if it really grows?
Trusted partner, you mean a centralized
Yeah.
one? We are going in this direction to have a distributor, right? So this is also the goal of this is how blockchain works, and this is how potentially almost everything will work in the near future. Maybe not near, but because still in blockchain, even it's more than 30 years available, then it's still, in my opinion, not so major that to be implemented every possible solution, because there are still a lot of work that needs to be done. For example, on the consensus method, there are so many research papers now. Because I'm, data scientist. I'm also a bit kind of a scientist, so I'm also doing a lot of research in scientific papers. And there are so many papers in this topic that it's still evolving. But I think we will come to a point that more and more parts of more applications will be transferred to blockchain.
The thing is, when we end up talking about blockchain, we end up talking about a lot of different things that maybe are not really closely related. We get into the weeds about the different coins, and and then other blockchains don't rely on a coin. So,
Well,
by the way, these lights are blinding, so sorry I can't. Does someone have a question out there about like a big issue we haven't covered? If there's, I'd like to see, because I want to make sure we do. And if not, okay, then we'll just keep going.
because I think your point is blockchain is this, it's like saying the internet, right?
It's like
So
saying,
big,
I was thinking
so big that you can go database, networking.
What about crime on the
payment,
internet? What about fraud on the
applications. You
internet?
go through all the,
Yeah.
it's a lot of components in there, and there's
Okay.
technologies, and there's businesses that are using blockchain. So it's kind of a very large topic.
Right.
In the 90s, that was every night when there used to be this thing like Real TV News, and you'd watch it, and they were always talking about crime on the internet and fraud. It's like, geez, it sounded stupid. So,
No, but I think it is the same thing in the direction that things are going. Right now, it's trendy to talk the word blockchain. Blockchain is a whole ecosystem, just like the internet is an ecosystem. We don't talk about, gee, that's really going to work great with IP protocols. It's not a conversation we tend to have anymore.
I've
It's
cleared a
just
lot of
given.
rooms.
And I think blockchain eventually is going to go that same route. We're going to talk about the application sitting on top of it and not thinking about what's underneath that's making the magic.
But we didn't spend 10 years sitting around talking about distributed databases, It's just that.
So
but blockchain, we feel.
today, I go to some conferences that are just coins and cryptocurrencies. They don't talk about technology at all, just where you invest.
Yeah.
Another one is how financial institutions can try to use blockchain. That's a different topic. Then I go to other places like, what are the protocols? I go to Stanford and they just talk about deep
The
technology,
academics of it,
PhD type of stuff in there that you go through down to the files and networking and architecture. In security, how are you going to do, what kind of security are you going to do? And we can get very detailed on the security algorithms of that. So they're just the different aspects. And then some of the crazy guys trying to tokenize real estate and other things. So it's just so many topics.
And it's going to be, we're going to be in this confused stage for at least 5 more years, I think. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but right?
Well, I think you just got to follow the topics that you're interested in and you can contribute at. Right? You may be able on the infrastructure, you may be on the applications, it just depends where you can learn and contribute. You may not know anything about transactions worldwide. It's like, why get into that if you don't know anything about it?
Is proof of work going to be a problem? We're running out of time. I really want to know, is proof of work with Bitcoin specifically going to destroy the world?
Not going to destroy the world. I don't see it as being a major underpinning of most of the blockchain implementations going forward.
But is it going to really start grabbing a lot of electricity and being?
It is.
Oh, it is. It already is.
I know. So, And the algorithm's not getting easier.
There's a whole major Bitcoin farm out in
I-
the Middle East somewhere.
I know. So isn't this a big problem, Carol? You saying, yeah?
Well, yes,
Yes.
it is a major climate issue.
Yeah, yes.
So that I'm not going to comment on how we deal with that.
Right.
But I think the reality is that while Bitcoin has paved the way for so many of these other innovations, it's just one of many ways that you can achieve consensus, and more innovative ways are being discovered every day. So I think more and more will move away from these in labor and effort and resource-intensive consensus mechanisms, and many are experimenting with alternative ways to do this.
The curtain is lifted, the expo floor is open, so we have to officially end, but there's like 57 different conversations we could have, so please feel free to talk to one or all, any of our panelists. Thank you so much for hanging in there, and you too, enjoy the show. Thank you. I mean, right now, what is it? Data centers.